Hey friends, welcome back to the cabin. Well, today we're canning beef. Before we get started, you'll want to check out the description box below this video for an ingredient list and lots of helpful tips. And also, it'll be good if you are already familiar with the canner that you're going to be using today. And if at the end of this video you found some value, I invite you to subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to hit that notification bell and a thumbs up. And also, we love feedback, so be sure to leave me a comment, or if you have a question, be sure to ask that question. So I'm about to gather up my supplies and get everything ready, and I'll be back with you and we'll get to canning. As you see here, I've got 2 trays of cubed beef. Now this beef came from a side of beef that we purchased not too long ago, and it was 3 roasts, averaging about 2 pounds a piece. But 2 of those had bone in them, so we're going to say maybe 5 1/4, 5 1/2 pounds altogether. The reason that I have it on these trays is I'm going to put it in a 300-degree oven, and I'm going to pre-cook it for about 15 to 20 minutes. I don't want it to be fully cooked. And the purpose of that is that when you can meat, if you pre-cook it, you're going to have a cleaner product inside and out. Visually, it just looks much better because it won't have the scum that will try to build up inside your jars. And also, a second benefit from this is I will be able to collect the pan juices from this and make a rich broth that will go in those jars and just make it just up the taste and quality of your final product altogether. So let me get these in the oven. I'm going to gather up all my supplies, and I'll be back with you in just a bit and go over the next steps. So I wanted to bring you back real quick, and I want to show you what the roasted beef looks like and kind of the pan drippings before I pour them off. So this is one tray, and you can see I can't tip it up very much because the drippings would pour off of it, but that's kind of what we're looking for. So I'm going to get these poured up and get my broth started, and I'll be back in just a bit. In this pot right here, I have 3 1/2 quarts of water, and I ended up with 1.5 cups of good clean drippings. Now, I did not scrape the pan because I didn't want the foamy stuff off the bottom of the pan in my drippings. I just poured it off what naturally came off, and that's what turned out to be really clean. So, okay, so I'm going to show you how I do my canner, prepare my canner and my jars before I pack them. So my canner has only 1 quart of water in it right now. That's not what it's called. That's not what the manufacturer calls for. It actually calls for about 3 quarts, but I'm going to show you why that I do that. So we've got 1 quart in here. The burner is on. It's up to heat. It's pretty hot in there. I've got 6 jars, quart jars, with about 1/4 of the jar of water in there, so that's hot as well. This jar is going in now with very hot water in it. That's the last one. I kind of wanted to show you how I do that. And those will be very hot and ready. So what I will do, as I get ready to pack the jars, I will take a jar out, pour the water back into the canner. And by the time I'm done, I'm going to have adequate water in the canner to do my canning, somewhere around 3 quarts. So we're going to layer our vegetables like that. I think I'm going to end up with about 4 quarts of stew. Trying to get an equal amount of celery and onion. And the meat has such a good aroma. And it's just gonna make a beautiful product. Like I said, it's gonna be beautiful on your pantry shelf when you pre-cook it. And it is a lot more trouble. Well, I won't say a lot. It is an extra step. It does take some time. But when you're putting food on the pantry for your family, getting ahead of myself here, so get my salt in there. Get my broth. My canner's bubbling over there. It's getting ready. It wants to do its job. And we want to be very attentive to that 1-inch headspace. We don't want to go over. Sometimes it's hard to debubble when you're doing these meat dishes like this, but if you can get down in the center and really just give it a little bit of agitation, wake it up, make it mad, get them bubbles out of there. And then check, yeah, we're still at our 1-inch headspace, we're good. All right, we're going to make sure these rims are good and clean. We do this for 2 reasons. We want to make sure that the rims are clean, and also we want to make sure that there's no nicks in the rim of the jar. Finger tight. You don't want to crank down on it. Finger tight. When you get resistance, just take 3 fingers and tighten down a little bit more. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit of canner safety before we get started. Now, my canner is the All-American canner. It's a very heavy, heavy, heavy canner. If you have one or if you've ever tried to pick one up, you know they're very heavy. Now, it does not have a rubber seal on it, so what I'll be doing is lubricating this edge with some something food safe. I prefer coconut oil, but you can use olive oil or shortening or lard or something like that. But a couple of things that I wanted to point out to you. You want to make sure that this vent right here is always clear, and you can hold it up to light to check it and make sure that you can see light through it, and that lets you know that it's clear, and you'll see why in just a bit. And also you want to make sure that your rubber pop-off valve is on there and that it's in good shape, that it's not dry rotted or old. If you have an older canner or purchase an older canner, I would suggest that you buy a new valve, pop-off valve to put in there. And also you want to make sure that your pressure gauge is accurate and in good working order, and what you want to do is about once a year, probably before canning season comes around, most county extension offices will test those for you and make sure that they're accurate. Okay, so I'm going to lubricate the edge with my coconut oil, and then I'll show you how we get it on and get the toggles on and get them tightened down. Okay, so we're going to line this arrow up with this indention, just like that, and we're going to make sure that we have our locks underneath our toggles. And we're going to work opposite sides putting these on. We're going to not tighten them, we're just going to get them in contact, and then we'll go back and tighten them in just a bit. And they can be hot because they're up against the hot canner. And what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to tighten this as evenly and level as possible because it tends to want to shift one way or the other. Now we'll go around and snug everything up. So we want to see a very aggressive steam coming out of this vent hole. Now there's a tad bit of steam coming out now. We're not going to start timing until we see a very forceful steam coming out of this vent. So I'll be back with you in just a moment and show you what that looks like. Okay, I think you can see that we've got a really aggressive steam coming out of here. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to start timing, and we're going to wait 10 minutes before we put our weight on. And the purpose of this is we're forcing air out of the canner and filling it with moist steam. So after 10 minutes, I'll be back with you, and we'll put the weight on, then we'll start timing our canning process. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes that we've been allowing the steam to vent very, very forcefully. So I'm about to put my weight on. Don't have my glasses on. Got to make sure it's on 10 pounds. Okay, so we have reached 10 pounds of pressure. We've got a little jiggle going on. We're going to try to set the pause, jiggle rhythm, see if we can get that going. So I'm going to turn my canner down. One thing you don't want to do is you don't want your canner to just have a constant, ferocious jiggle. That means it's just trying too hard to keep that pressure regulated. So let's turn it down and see if we can get it going right. There it goes. We got a little pause. Now it can, look at there. We're getting that rhythm going now. So I'm going to turn it down just a tad bit more so it'll pause a little bit more. But that is exactly what we're looking for. So when it first started jiggling, I looked at the clock and we're going to time it for quarts, 90 minutes next. So I'll be back with you after the 90 minutes is up, and I'll walk you through the next steps. There it is. It's been 90 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the flame off underneath my canner and leave it alone. We're not going to do anything to help pressure fall or anything. We're going to just leave it and let the pressure drop naturally. The reason that you want to do that is if you're trying to help it fall faster, you can siphon out liquid out of your jars by doing that, or you could even crack jars because of the extreme pressure change or quick pressure change. So we're going to let it just fall naturally, and it won't take but just a few minutes. And once it gets to zero, I'm still going to leave it alone for probably 15 or 20 minutes and just let it rest and cool down a little bit before I take my lid off. So I'll be back with you and show you those steps in just a bit. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes since the pressure dropped to zero on the canner. I just removed the weight, and I also, of course, you can see that I loosened my toggles, and if you look, you'll see that there's a gap here in the lid. And what I did was I picked the lid up and set it on the locks so that there's a gap where air can move in and out of the canner. And what we're doing is we want to equalize the air temperature inside the canner with the room temperature. So now that I've done that, I'm going to give it about 20 minutes, give or take, and when I come back, then we'll remove the lid and take out those beautiful jars. Okay, it's been about 20-25 minutes since I raised the lid on the canner to allow the air temperature inside and outside to kind of equalize. So we're going to go ahead and take this lid off away from our face. So now, let's see what we've got. Oh goodness. Now this is just the beef tips. Look at that beautiful broth you see it dripping. Look at that beautiful broth. Isn't that gorgeous? Now let's see if we can find one of the beef stews. Oh yes, look at how pretty. Now you can see how by pre-cooking the meat before we put it in the jars and canned it made a huge difference as far as the cleanliness inside the jars. We're not seeing a scum build up on the inside like you would if you had raw meat. If you took and canned and raw packed meat and canned it, a lot of times, most of the time, you're going to have a little bit of a scum stick to the inside of the jars, and it makes it more difficult to clean the jars afterward, and it's just not very visually appealing or pleasing. The meat is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's safe. It's just that it's not as appealing. Now, I have had people say that when you pre-cook it, it does have a little bit better flavor, but I find that either way, it's a little different, but it's both both ways of doing that still produces a very tasty product. Okay, so we're going to get the rest of these out of the canner, and I'll be back with some beautiful words. So what I'm going to do now that these jars are out of the canner, I'm going to let them sit and rest for 24 hours with the rings on. I'm not going to tighten the rings, and I'm not going to take the rings off. Now some of them have loosened up, and that's fine. Everything worked like it was supposed to work. They're all sealed. Make sure. Yeah, I thought I checked a while ago, but I wanted to make sure. They're all sealed, and so tomorrow I will remove the rings and wipe the jars down with warm water just to clean any residue off the outside. It is such a blessing to have healthy, clean, home canned food on your pantry shelf. I like to diversify my food storage and my food preservation. I don't want everything in the freezer. That makes it very vulnerable to loss if the grid goes down or we have a bad storm and the electricity is out for an extended period of time. So you just want to have a little food security, diversify your food storage, and also have clean, healthy food on your pantry shelf to feed your family. And I want to remind you of these beautiful words. Don't ever forget that your Heavenly Father loves you. And I'll see you on the next video. God bless.